Hi BookTube. We are in the kitchen/dining room. The camera is stacked on top of even more DVDs than usual because for this video I could not manage handling all these books on the couch, and that is because, well, first of all, I'm here to do the 10 Untouched Books Tag, a tag that I had seen going around. I'm not sure who started it exactly. I'll link them down below. But I saw Steve Donahue's one, which is very funny. Book Time with Elvis did it, and I was kind of considering doing it. And then I saw that Steve at Heroic Book Adventures, who I will link down below, did the tag and tagged me. So now I have to do it. And thank you, Steve, for the tag. I have many untouched books in this house. That is because for many years I was not just a book reader, but a book buyer. I wouldn't say that it was compulsive, but would make maybe a few too many trips to the thrift store and half-price books and Goodwill, and maybe visit thriftbooks.com a little bit too often. And when you're at a thrift store or a library sale and you see a book that you want for like $1 or less, it's kind of hard to say no to. Then when you end up filling all 4 or 5 of your bookshelves up with books that you haven't read, you figure it's probably time to give it a rest. Bluebell is not used to me being up here, so she is circling my chair. And so I could have picked many books for this tag, but being that there are so many, it was easy to kind of come up with a theme. I've kind of alluded to this in comments on people's videos before, but I have kind of a fear of the chunker. I'm very rarely inclined to start books that are over 600 pages or so. But being a used book buyer for such a long time, and coming across long books for a really cheap price, you just, sometimes you just can't turn them down. And so I have accumulated quite a few. And I've got 10 to show off here. Probably won't have a lot to say about these because I have not read them yet. So we'll just try to blow through these. First is Brandon Sanderson, The Way of Kings. I've said before that I'm not really a huge fantasy fan, but I've heard that Sanderson is a pretty good entry point. He's kind of a lighter author, I've heard, and so I've got the first book in this particular series, the Stormlight Archive, and so I will read it someday. I've read a decent amount of Stephen King. I generally like the Stephen King that I've read, but the ones that I have read are Carrie and his hard case crime books, and I think the longest one is probably The Shining. And so his big books I have mostly stayed away from. But the two that kind of stuck out to me as I was looking over my shelves were The Stand and 11/22/63. I'm pretty sure I mentioned The Stand in one of my Rocket Summer videos in connection to Earth Abides. And because of how much I liked Earth Abides, it got me a little more excited to read The Stand. But it's 1,100 something pages. The issue that I have is that I can't help but think to myself, a book that is 1,200 pages long, I could read 300-400 page books in that time, right? I'm probably just thinking about it too much in terms of numbers, but that is one of the excuses that I give myself. There's really no excuse for having not read this, on one of Angelina's videos, I said that this would be the next big book that I read. That doesn't mean that I'm going to read a big book anytime soon, but this will be the next one, and this is Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry, and an author whose books that I've read I like quite a bit. Last Picture Show, Leaving Cheyenne, his nonfiction I like quite a bit, and I know that I will like this. I know that I will love this book, and so of these 10 books, this is the one that I will read next. When next will be, I do not know. Oh, good Lord. Probably the longest. Well, I'm not quite sure, but a contender for the longest book of these 10 is this. This is Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. 1,400 pages. 1,400. What is the exact page count of this? 1,463 pages. I mean, this is like a murder weapon. This particular edition, but it's a classic. It's a book that I know I want to at least give a shot one day. And you see it at a thrift store or a used bookstore for $1 or $2, and yeah, you're gonna get it. Like every good millennial man, I have a copy of Infinite Jest that sits on my shelf and collects dust, and which I plan on getting to someday, and I will give this a shot someday, based on how much I like his nonfiction. I think his travel essays especially are just gut-bustingly hilarious. I have my doubts that the energy that is present in those essays can be kept up for 1,000-page novel. Not just a 1,000-page novel, but like 1,000 big pages of like little tiny text. But one day we shall see. And then the other contender for the longest of these 10, this is only I think it's only 1,300 pages or so. This is Robert Burton's The Anatomy of Melancholy, probably bought in one of NYRB Classics. Like their seasonal sales that they do, and I bet you I bought this shortly after I read The Noonday Demon by Andrew Solomon, the other big book on depression, which I absolutely love, and so I figure I will probably like this when I read it someday. Another library sale pickup, Robert Caro's The Power Broker, a contender for the most critically acclaimed work of nonfiction. I mean, I don't know anybody who has read this book who doesn't love it. And you see it at a library for 50 cents, you just can't say no. And then these last two are probably the most embarrassing, like in terms of blind spots. I have read The Hobbit, and I like The Hobbit, but I have not read Lord of the Rings. And I mean, I've seen the movies, which are also great. And if you think about it, this is really like 3 not very long novels. So thinking about it that way makes this a little easier to approach. So maybe this will be the second big book that I read after Lonesome Dove. Last, we have what I believe was a flea market haul. Saw this in a box for $1. A very nice hardcover, and so I just could not say no. This is Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. The movie I've always had some kind of respect for, just in terms of technical achievement and acting and whatnot. I've never really been fully into it. I mean, if we're talking movies from 1939 directed by Victor Fleming, like I would go with The Wizard of Oz all the way. But you know, it's a Pulitzer Prize winner. It's beloved, and so I will give it a shot someday. Those are 10 of the many books in this house that have sat on my shelves untouched for at least a year. And I mean, just in the past 15 minutes of making this video, I feel some extra motivation to, you know, finally start some of these. We'll just have to see how August TBR works out in terms of BookTube events and things like that. But yes, it's very likely that Lonesome Dove will get read sooner rather than later. Thank you for watching, and thank you to Steve once again for the tag.